Alright, y'alls. Welcome back to the podcast. Back to Tomboy Official. Jumping into talking about what happened once I left from, staying at that office location. Moving from the office to living back over near USD, kind of near USD, and getting back to being involved with the living near there, moving in. I mean, I've talked about this part of my experience before, so I don't want to beat it to death, but it's kind of the last leg of my San Diego living. I would say on an LGBTQ plus note, I was more out when I was there compared to how I was when I was compared to how I was when I was living all the other places. I think I was kind of more involved at this house, and I had been, after that loft, by the border, I was kind of more, I'd been more isolated for a while, so I was a little less skeptical of housemate situations, and I figured, it should work out fine, because I'm living back in an area that I want to live in, and I figured at the very least, people are going to make good first impressions, so at the very least, I should be able to get away with things being pretty smooth for a while, which they kind of were. So when I first moved in, this house had a lot of moving pieces, shifting parts. I've talked about it, incessantly, because of, most of my recording and starting podcasting kind of began with me just needing a reason to kind of have, something to do that felt productive that got me out of the house. So, towards my end of staying there, or during the Rona, actually, probably sometime in 2020 is when I started podcasting this podcast and other podcasts. And, that was it played a big role in me doing it, because I was like, well, I'm going to leave, the house after working, because I would work from home, and I didn't want to be there, and it was already stressful, and work was stressful, so I was like, I need, a place I can go, but nothing was really open, where I could go, and I couldn't really see my friends all the time and stuff, so I was like, once it got to 2020, I was kind of more out of the house, but and recording podcasts and venting and complaining and bitching and moaning about that environment and just how uncomfortable it was. So a lot of the early days on the podcast, unfortunately, was me just being I really dislike these people in this place. So sorry that it's going to be a repeat of a lot of that, but I think I've got some insight into it as well. More than what I had before, especially when it comes to boundaries and my own needs getting met and managing my own stress and anxiety and depression and mental health and that kind of thing. I did tell myself, I was like, you know, never again. I'm never again gonna live with people that I do not want to live with. Um, that that are impacting my, you know, mental health, that are impacting my, you know, basic healthcare needs getting met. I'm parked near this wall. It's a low wall, like maybe 6 feet tall, and the UPS truck on the other side of the wall kind of backed into a tree on the other side of the wall just now. So I don't know. I love being outside sometimes, just people watching and like just kind of enjoying the things that happen around me. Um, it's kind of like chill stimulation, you know, so I kind of appreciate it. But it is not quiet out here today, so I hope it's not too terrible. I am talking kind of quietly because I'm parked outside and somebody came and parked right next to me, and it's kind of warm. It's like it's the afternoon right now, 1:25 p.m. So, you know, because it's the afternoon, it's kind of hot, but we just had a storm early morning. So I'm kind of in the shade, but also I don't have both windows. I can't really roll down my windows fully because I don't want this other person overhearing me at all. So yeah. This is more about like a mental health journey more so than it is about the house. Um, this one definitely impacted my mental health probably more than the others. But in combination, the job I had, you know, impacted my mental health too. So, well, I worked for two different places. When I first moved there, I worked for a clinic, and then during 2020, I started working for a site that was remote for the most part. Like it was like hybrid technically, but it was remote because we couldn't really go into doctors' offices and stuff. So basically, when I first moved in, it was Easter of like probably like 2019, 2018, somewhere around there. When I first moved in, and there was someone, like basically the setup of this house, which I've explained before, was me renting one room towards the back of one hall. There was somebody across the hall from me and somebody who shared a wall with me. So the guy who shared a wall with me, we're still homies. The lady who lived across from me, she was older, retired, had a dog. Yeah, overall chill, but towards the end, I just didn't prefer her. The guy who I shared a wall with eventually ended up moving out before I did, like maybe a year before I did. So he moved out, I think in 2020, April of 2020. But he'd been living there maybe 2 years, a year or two before I moved in. And he'd been living there with that old lady as well as the old man who lived in the studio in the back. So the old man had his own bathroom, and basically we all shared one kitchen. And there was usually somebody couch surfing, not all the time, but I think we went through, I want to say maybe 6 people who stayed on that couch at different points in time. Some of them were better than others. So when I first moved in, there was a guy who was gonna move out soon. I want to say he was there maybe 1 to 2 weeks. I really don't remember, but he would be up at night gaming, and he would talk probably about as loud as I'm talking on here, like quietly. You know, he was quiet, but because the house has wood floors, the bedroom doors don't fully reach the floor. Sound travels a lot, and then like there's a crawl space under a lot of the house, and so when somebody's walking, it echoes. I didn't have a bed frame or a box spring mattress or anything. I had a futon mattress, like full, like Japanese style, on the floor. So when I was sleeping, I was like, you know, the floor basically. And so that contributed to experiencing more vibrations and noises. Just because I was so close to the ground, it did make it louder. Um, and so that was a little bit annoying. So I could hear this guy talking at night, and he would be up late. I don't know if he was gaming or what, but I remember when I first moved in, the old man was like, I just want to make sure that, you have a job and you leave the house and you're not up all night. Like, I basically, I was working a 9 to 5 when I first moved there, driving to and from Chula Vista, which is about 20-ish, 25-ish minutes away. And I had a full life, like I would go out a few times a week at night, and I would, just have my own life. Like, I wasn't really there to be friends with anybody or to start hanging out with any of these people or even sit around the house and talk with them. I was like, I go to work. When I'm not at work, I'm in my room. I go out with my friends. When I'm not out with my friends, I go to my room. I didn't have friends over. I wasn't having guests. I wasn't, involving people in my life. If I wanted to make phone calls, I usually liked my privacy, so I would go out in my car or go down the street. Like, at a certain point, I stopped hanging out in the car outside the house because I felt like it felt a little crowded because we had people across the street always doing construction, and then the people next door to us, like basically where I parked, it was enough between the houses that, like, basically our house was on like one side of the yard, if that makes sense. So we had like a full length of front yard, probably the length of like two cars, um, where you could park, um, just by the curb there. You could park, and you wouldn't be in front of like the windows. You wouldn't be like right in front of like the house windows or right in front of the neighbors' windows, because it was a duplex, so I wouldn't have been in front of the neighbors' windows that we shared walls with, or in front of basically there was like a little dip down for the driveway of the neighbor's house past our yard, and then there was their driveway where they had their garage, and then they had like a segment of their yard, and then their house was at the far end of the yard. So like there was quite a bit of space, where I could sit. I would kind of smoke out. I feel like the smoke wasn't going into anybody's windows. Like, they could probably smell it and tell that I was smoking for sure, but like, smoke wasn't going into anybody's windows. I was pretty cautious about that kind of stuff. Like, I didn't want to be, overstepping, because, not everybody smokes. Not everybody wants to be around cannabis products. It is kind of a taboo, even though it is legal here. Not federally, but it's legal as far as like recreational and medical. Um, but yeah, smoking out in the car when I wasn't like driving, that there was never really a true issue with that. And then I knew I had neighbors across the street who had kids, and like I made sure I wasn't smoking when the kids were like out, like coming and going from like the car, or coming and going, getting back home from school and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I kind of made sure that I was kind of handling everything pretty smoothly, and I don't think I had any complaints. Like, nobody really complained. The only thing somebody told me was, like, I could tell that, the old lady, like, I lived in close quarters with people, so I knew there was going to be some stuff that they were going to be aware of. I wasn't going to pretend like I didn't know, like I was aware that, I kind of knew that, there was stuff that they were aware of about my habits and my lifestyle, but I wasn't really actively talking about anything with people. But, they knew kind of like when I would sleep, when I'd be awake, what kind of stuff I would eat because we shared fridges. I didn't really have like too strict of like a shower schedule. Um, and when I stopped going into work every day, during 2020, um, I kind of honestly didn't really shower every day. I mean, I showered at the gym quite often too, but like it just the place wasn't clean, and like I had to share it with all these people, and there was always these issues with the bathroom. Like it was worn down, it was old, and like you know, um, I don't know. I really felt like early on things were okay. So the guy on the couch kind of moved out, um, and this other lady moves in, and she was basically um, living there. Like I guess she would travel. Like she was kind of like a bit of. She called herself a bit of a nomad. Like she kind of would travel, and like she just needed kind of a home base to kind of like store her extra belongings outside of her backpack. And she didn't really have furniture. She didn't really have much. She just kind of kept some clothing belongings, like extra stuff she would keep at the house. And she'd be gone like most of the time. Most of every week she was gone. And on occasion she'd be back for like maybe 3-4 days at a time. Otherwise I felt like she was always out. But I really liked her. She was really nice, really sweet, really quiet. The only time I really heard her is because the guy who I shared a wall with and her, they would talk a lot. Or the old man, would talk a lot to her because he was always lonely and would always talk to anybody who was in an open space. And so unfortunately that was a source of noise in the house, was because the old man was so chatty and lonely, and he didn't really get out every day and didn't really seem to have a social life at all other than talking to people in the house. That became a problem and a burden, I think, to most of us, because he always wanted to talk, and he'd call. Like I would avoid him and ignore him, but not only would he kind of catch me or other people when we were in the kitchen trying to cook, or when we're kind of coming in and like maybe getting in the fridge, or like going back and forth bringing stuff in or out from the car, or like getting ready to leave. He would always find a way to try to start conversations. So that was annoying. And then so I started just avoiding him. And then he would call people too. So he'd call when he didn't even need anything, and he'd be on the phone for like an hour, maybe 2 hours, just like talking about his life and just talking. Like he was lonely. And I like, part of me is like, I feel bad, but at the same time it's like, dude, I work in mental health. I talk to people all day. I'm not trying to like come home and have like a 3 hour long conversation with somebody while I'm trying to like cook and eat my dinner, and then go to my room and just trying to unwind, and then have this guy calling me to talk on the phone for another hour. It's like, bro, you need to like get friends and get your own thing going on for yourself, and not overburden people. And I felt bad, and I think sometimes people can tell when you feel bad about something, and they'll just do it just to get their needs met, even if you don't want them interacting with you. They kind of overburden you with their loneliness. And so I've really developed an aversion towards lonely people. Like I can just like sense it from a mile away, and I'm like, dude, I don't like it. Like to me, I'm like, you need to figure out how to get your social needs met in a way that you're not overburdening everybody. Because I'm like, dude, this guy's talking to not just me, but the guy I shared a wall with. Whoever was on the couch, he would just start conversations, because it's like they can't go anywhere. They don't have a bedroom with a door, and so they were stuck talking to him. And because everything in the house echoed so badly, whenever he was talking to somebody in the living room, everybody else could hear it too. So it's like there was like constant conversations going on, and I would just avoid him and I tried to be polite about it, but there was a point where I just started walking around the house with my earbuds in, because I was like, I don't know who's talking to me or who's, like whatever, Um, I didn't really know what was going on, so um, yeah. And someone did confront me about it. Eventually, they were kind of like, yeah, like I heard like two of the roommates talking, kind of like sarcastic, joking, but they would always one that old lady was always kind of like, I guess a little. I would call her maybe a little bitchy. Like she would kind of, you know, she never had anything really positive to say, and she was always just complaining about everything. And so she would always just kind of like, not really start shit, but kind of like, she'd always say stuff where it's like, if I was someone else, it probably would have started an issue, but I would just keep my mouth shut and just wouldn't talk. And to me, I feel like people kind of got the point. Like, I don't want to talk to any of you guys. And it wasn't to be mean. It's just like, I was literally talking all day. I didn't have that much free time, at the end of my day before I had to wake up and go to work again the next day. And the two older people in the house didn't really work full time, and they were both home all the time, and they were both really depressed and really lonely and really easily irritated about everything. I didn't want to talk to them. It's like, that's a lot of energy to come home to. And so that was kind of the first issue that arose, was just trying to manage that. And it was okay. It was like, okay, like whatever. But I would kind of just like start avoiding them. And then, we had some people on the couch, after that lady left, the one who was pretty chill. I don't remember which sequence people moved in, but there was one guy who was like a football player or something. I think he was like recently divorced. Like, I don't really know his whole story, but I just knew it because he would talk on the phone. And he was really sweet. Like, he was an athlete. He was really nice. I kind of learned about people because the old lady used to just kind of gossip a lot and tell me like, oh, this so and so was, did you know that so and so was doing this or so and so was doing that? And like, that was kind of her style of communication. And so like, I just kind of learned, because I'd be cooking and stuff, and it's like, you can't really escape anybody when you're like actively in the middle of making a meal. And they knew that, and so I feel like they would take advantage of that situation to come out and talk. And to them, maybe they were being friendly and trying to feel inviting, but after a certain point, I was like, this is no longer inviting. It's more of a burden and an annoyance for me. Like, I don't need to like talk to anybody when I'm cooking. Like, I don't need to talk to anybody in that house. I had my own friends. I had my own life. Like, I was just there to sleep and eat and live, when I wasn't out doing my other stuff. I wasn't trying to like create a lifestyle that involved any of these people. And so, the guy who I shared a wall with, he was kind of more my vibe. Like, he kind of understood, and you could kind of tell him like, oh, I'm just kind of tired, and he would just kind of like leave you alone, or like the stuff he would have to talk about had a lot of depth to it. Like, he liked to talk about like, extraterrestrials and like the universe and kind of like, human emotional states and like stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily unloading about his own personal life. He was talking more kind of like in theory about the things. And so I really liked the interactions I had with him. We were like a couple years apart in age, maybe 3-4 years apart in age, and like, we kind of have a lot of similar values and beliefs. It's just like, yeah, when I live with people, I know that I might have my own emotional situations going on and other people might too, but nobody should be getting in anyone's way. And we totally were both very like respectful of like that type of thinking, and just kind of like trying to be sensitive to like make sure we kind of understood, our interactions and how they might be affecting other people. Whereas everybody else in the house seemed to be kind of like not looking at it that way, and they were kind of like, trying to get their emotional needs met by just kind of overly burdening other people. and not really taking a hint or not really being sensitive to other people's stress levels or anything like that. They were just kind of like, very just kind of unaware, or if they were aware, they just avoided it just because they needed someone to talk to. So that's kind of how I would kind of conceptualize the situations that were happening. It was just because, these people were just overdoing it, It was like, I mean, imagine, you already have a stressful job and then you come home and you're like, I hope to God, I get out of the car fast enough and into my room so that nobody catches me at the door and then starts like talking to me. And then at a certain point, I just would just walk straight through and just be like, cool, I'm busy. And that would always be my excuse. Oh, I'm busy. Oh, sorry, I'm busy. Okay, like, all right, I'm busy, and I would just like excuse myself while I was saying I was busy and just like leave and go to my room, even if somebody else was already talking to me. I was like, I don't even care at this point, because so it was kind of like I really didn't use the rest of the house, just my room, because otherwise, people didn't really take the hint that like I just don't want to talk. But towards the end, they kind of got it. But yeah, when the athlete guy was on the couch, he was chill. He was very nice. I would kind of talk to him a little bit in passing, but like, he was really nice, really polite. I really liked him. I liked his energy. Everyone got along well with him, but I could tell everyone was burdened by this old man, the old man in the back studio. Who else lived on there's this one guy that I guess had previously had some kind of substance issue, and he lived there on the couch, and he started having, I guess, because I overheard him once in the bathroom, on speakerphone, because you could hear it. If somebody was on the phone on speaker, you could hear everything they had to say. Like, there was no hiding it. Like, that house had like the thinnest walls and the most echoing I've ever heard in any place in my life. And, you couldn't really talk to anyone without at least one other person, if not everybody, overhearing you, unless you're kind of like whispering. Like, even if you would talk quietly, if you're in the hall or in the kitchen or in the bathroom or something, it would really echo. And unless someone was like playing music in their room or something, and the guy who I shared a wall with, he would always be playing music. But yeah, like, yeah, this the guy who moved onto the couch next after this athlete guy, I didn't really talk to him too much. Like, kind of like, hey, like, welcome kind of thing. Got his name. Didn't really have any interest in like interacting. He seemed like he was gonna be just like chill, but I didn't really know. And then, he didn't sleep on the couch because he didn't sleep on the couch because it hurt his back, and so he started sleeping on the floor for a couple nights when he first moved in. And I remember he didn't like the lights on because he would sleep in the living room. And like, I remember once, it was probably like a weekend night, maybe like a Friday night, Saturday night, and I went to heat something up. Probably around, I was like, he's probably not going to be asleep. So it was like maybe 9 p.m. or so. And I remember heating something up in the microwave. So I go in the kitchen to turn on the light, and he asked me, like, while the thing was heating up, he was like, can you please turn the light off? And I'm like, okay, like, that's weird because now I'm cooking in the dark. But it was like one time because I don't usually eat that late. And then this other guy, the guy that I shared a wall with, his schedule usually, he would be up around 10 a.m. He would start getting ready for work around 1:30, and he would go to work and work. I guess I want to say his schedule was like 2 to 10 p.m. or 2 to 10:30 or something like that. 2 p.m. to 10:30 or something like that. Because he'd usually get home around 10:30 something p.m. And he just worked down the street, like maybe 3 miles away. And he would basically come home and cook his dinner. And he'd go to his room and he'd watch a movie, and he'd do this like every single night. So 10:30 he comes home, he's cooking. I started realizing this guy's cooking in the dark. Like he would, have like either the microwave door open for that kind of little bit of light, or because he would cook by stove, he wasn't using the microwave like ever, I don't think. Or he would cook, he would just cook, his own meals. And he had a habit of cooking his dinner every night, and then like cooking his lunch every day or whatever, before he left the house. And so he would always do that. He would always be cooking. And then he would just you know he would be cooking in the dark. Not like complete dark, but it wasn't like kitchen light. It was like a little bit of lighting. Like the stove had a light on it, so I think he would use the stove light and the microwave light, and then otherwise not the actual like ceiling light in the kitchen. And so that was the first thing I noticed about this other guy in the living room, because he put a blow up mattress there and was like sleeping, so it took up like the whole living room pretty much. So it was kind of hard to like really be there, be comfortable, because literally he was sleeping. Like other people were couch surfing, but he was literally sleeping on a mattress in the middle of the living room. And so it just felt kind of like, he was losing sleep, and we were kind of not happy that, there wasn't really a lot of space in the house. Like it really felt crowded. And again, you still have people being obnoxious and, talking and overdoing it with the conversations and all that. And so this guy, I don't know, I overheard him one day, on the phone in the bathroom. And it was later than usual, like, because I remember I used to have a certain time when I would get up and start getting ready. And it was later than usual. Like, he was getting up after me, and I was getting ready to go to work, but I had already showered and everything, and I was just like prepping the rest of my stuff to like take it with me. And I hear him in there just like, somebody's like, "Oh, you're gonna be late again," and he's like, "I'm not late, I'm not usually late." And the other person's like, "Yeah, you're always late." And so he's like, he got himself ready. I don't know when he left, but I just remember I left and didn't make much of it. I was like, okay. But I did find it weird that like that day I woke up and he hadn't left yet, because he was always leaving earlier than I was. Then there was another day when I left early, or when I was going to get up at my normal time, and this guy was like in the shower, and so I waited, in the living room on the side of one of the couches, and he comes out of the bathroom kind of in underwear and kind of like whatever. And I'm just like, "Hey, like I need to get ready for work. Like, are you, like, do you know about how long it's gonna take? And then because he was never there at that time. He was always gone, usually. And he's like, "Yeah, 15 more minutes." So I'm like, "Okay, fine." So what I usually used to do was get showered, get dressed, and then eat breakfast. But then I was like, well, if he's gonna be taking 15 more minutes, I'll just go and I'll make my breakfast first and eat some breakfast, and then once I shower, I'll just brush my teeth and then go. And I started keeping stuff in my room, like an extra toothpaste with some water, and a cup, like a spit cup kind of thing, and like a pee cup kind of thing, because I was like, dude, I share the room with so many people. I share the bathroom with so many freaking people that like sometimes you just needed the bathroom, or sometimes you just needed to leave, and like I needed like to wet my hair to comb it, or like brush my teeth to like start heading out and stuff. And like, you know, the guy I shared a wall with always had a pretty set schedule. The lady across the hall from me always had a pretty set schedule. But the people on the couch just seemed to kind of have whatever schedule they wanted. And so it was really hard to tell if someone was going to be in the shower when you needed the shower. This guy, you know, I overheard the old lady talking to him once about like how he needs to be respectful and trying to like interfere in his life, telling him about certain things that he needs to, you know, get together and do. And I can't remember what it was, but I feel like maybe he was being rude or disrespectful or something. And I get it, because it's like, I partly had patience, and then another part of me was like, well, I was getting stoned almost every day at work at a certain point. So I was like, you know, and looking back, I'm like, that's probably how I coped with it all, because I was just like stoned. I was like, so I wasn't really, like, yes, I was irritated, but I wasn't irritated enough to like act out on it, if that makes sense. And so, you know, that's just kind of how I lived for those few years. And, you know, everything started escalating more and more and more. And I think mostly the guy in the back and the lady, the old lady, they started having some issues with their health, with their finances, with their stress levels, and that started impacting the rest of the house, because they just kind of started doing all kinds of stuff that was like, when I first moved in, it wasn't an issue, and then it became more of an issue. So the guy that was in the living room on the blow-up mattress, you know, he kind of seemed to be sleeping in a lot more, not keeping the routine that he had before. I don't know if he lost his job. I don't know what happened. And he basically wasn't really, like, I wasn't involved in his business, so I was like, well, maybe he's just taking days off. Maybe he, you know, like, I don't know, like, whatever, like, it might not really be an issue. But when I noticed that old lady and him kind of having that little bickering session, and then, you know, I guess not too long after that, the old man had some run-in with him that I can't remember what it was. And then from that point, there was, I guess, the guy um, who I shared a wall with. He got a little, goodness, somebody likes Nirvana. So he gets a little irritated, and they start fighting and arguing about golly knows why. Like, they just start fighting. But yeah, I guess the guy who I shared a wall with, at first his knives went missing. He got some knives as a gift, and of course he keeps them in the kitchen because he uses them. And he was mentioning some of his nice knives were missing, and it was common for us to kind of text everybody in the house, because usually it's like, oh, if something needs to be resolved, like, it just takes a text, like, hey, if you're the last one to leave the house, make sure the back and the front doors are locked. Simple things like that, that's like, just make sure, that if you think you're the last one to leave, just make sure everything is locked, because somebody said they came home multiple times and like the front door would be unlocked. Like, we had the screen door that we would, because someone was usually in the living room, a lot of times we would have the front door open with the screen door closed but unlocked. And so, like, it wasn't uncommon to just leave the house and not lock the screen door if somebody was on the couch. But then it's like, okay, well, if that person isn't there, like, they would leave or whatever. And so it was kind of common. Sorry, I love Nirvana, but sorry if you can hear it in the background still. But yeah, it was kind of hard to have this this guy, little issues were coming up like that. So, it kind of seemed like that guy would have been the one who would have been tampering with those knives or whatever. I don't think they ever were returned. And then I think the guy I share a wall with, I think he confronted the guy about it. And they got into some kind of argument where I don't really remember exactly what took place. I really don't remember. I don't know if I was there or not. I can't recall. But either way, they got in a fight, and not like a fist fight, but some kind of verbal fight, and ended up the guy on the couch shortly after that, or on the blow up mattress rather, he ended up leaving. So there was that issue, and then not only did he end up leaving, but this other situation comes up after that, where another person moves into the house. This was one of the last of the sets of people who moved in that I've talked about a lot, that was this lady that just had so many mental health issues, and just they weren't managed. And so she was sleeping on the couch after that guy moved out, and she would talk I would talk to her a little bit, but she would say stuff that was like weird. But I was just kind of like, maybe it's a language barrier, I don't really know. But the more I got to know her and her kind of habits and patterns, I started noticing more and more and more that she's like not all right. And she would say things to me like, oh, like, I'm here, I'm fixing my credit, I'm paying off my debt. And I'm like, oh, good, that makes sense. That makes like perfect sense why somebody would be couch surfing, but I wasn't like involved. But she would talk to me sometimes because we were like similar age almost. And at first I didn't mind talking to her, but I did notice that she would seem to be what I thought was on her phone arguing all the time. At night, in the morning, like just any time of day or night. But this was in the living room. So yes, I could hear it at night, but it wasn't too bad of an issue. And she had this wardrobe in the hall that had like a zipper all around it and stuff. So she would just be constantly zipping, unzipping, zipping, unzipping, and like excessively. It was like whenever she would leave, like to go to her room, she would zip it up, and then she would unzip it, and then she would zip it, and she would unzip it, and she would zip, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like, and it was so loud, I could hear it from my room. Like, it was probably like 10 to 12 feet or so down the hall from me, and I could hear this zipper. It would be any time of day or night. She would just be zipping and unzipping this stupid thing. And so not only that, but the stomping, and then the old lady would sit down with her at a certain point and start having conversations like, hey, if there's someone on your phone upsetting you, just don't answer the phone. And it started getting to a point where she would slam the door when she would leave, like the front, like we had a screen door, but it was like one of those solid metal screen doors, not like the little flimsy kind that you could just like poke. Like it was the kind that was like actual like metal. And so she would take that and just like slam into it, and she'd be like slamming stuff. She'd slam doors when she would leave, and she would always be like coming and going at night. It would be like 11, 12 at night, and she'd be like outside, like and we thought it was like a simple thing, like if you need to go and be loud, just go outside and do it, like go in your car. Like, because I would talk on the phone in my car for ages. I'd be on the phone with my friends for like hours sometimes, and just like podcasting and like whatever. I'd be like on my phone, for a long time. But I knew like better than to sit in the house and do that for like 3-4 hours straight. every day, you know? I was like, I'm just going to go in my car. Like, I have more privacy, I have more space. I'm not like actively ignoring someone who has to overhear every word that I have to say, like, over and over and over again. So, yeah, so, yeah, so once I noticed that, sorry, it's gonna be a little loud. I had to roll down my window, because it's really just getting too hot in here. But, yeah, I was just kind of annoyed that she was the way she was. And sometime during while she was couch surfing, the guy I shared a wall with and the old man got into some blowout argument. This was near April or just before April. And it all started because, you know, this guy I shared a wall with used to always get, like, he would get, like, multiple times a week, like, Amazon deliveries, Amazon Prime deliveries of, like, CDs and stuff like that. Like, maybe multiple CDs at a time, or, like, other belongings and stuff. I don't know what he was ordering, but all kinds of little stuff. And so he would get it, and so most of the packages that came to the house, everyone kind of assumed it was his. And so, because he was getting a lot of packages, I mean, you know, there must have been something else going on too, because the recycle was like usually full. Between the old lady and her drinking of like a case of beer every week or two, so she would have her boxes of beer, her empty boxes that had had beer. She'd had not just the empty boxes with the beer, but she'd had what else? Like empty boxes that had had beer. She'd had beer bottles. We had just the regular recycling. You know, we didn't drink the tap water, so we had, you know, we all had like gallons of water that we would get, and then, you know, recycled those. And if you think about like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people recycling a bunch of stuff, and then somebody's not taking the recycling every week, because I think the recycling only came every other week, and so it would fill up, like it would be completely filled. Our recycling would pretty much completely fill up. So there was a rule, you know, that I wasn't aware of, but there was a rule, you know, break down the boxes. So if I had a big box or something, I would definitely break it down, but because I overheard somebody saying like that when the gamer guy had moved, he basically left, you know, he moved a bunch of his stuff and had some boxes that he didn't break down. But they were big boxes, and I remember that. So I was like, okay, well, if I have big boxes, I'll break them down. Not a big issue. But no one had actively told me to break down all boxes. I didn't really think about it. So I had like a small box. Like if you're familiar with Amazon Prime, some of the boxes are really small and flat. And so I had a box like small and flat like that. And I put it on the top of the other boxes, and it was mine. But I remember that the guy who usually got stuff delivered, the old man kind of started getting onto his case, and he basically started to just like I gotta drive. I'm just gonna move my car because there's someone else hanging out here now, and it's getting hot, and I'm practically melting, and I can't keep my windows open, and there's this guy who's like starting to light up a cigarette, over here on the side of this building. Alright, I'm gonna park right here. Alright, so I'm just gonna stay parked on the side of this building. Alright, so now I'm in the shade at least. But yeah, there was that. This guy was like the old man he started this argument with the guy I shared a wall with about the boxes. Like, I thought I told you to break down the boxes, and this is like late at night. This guy's cooking his dinner. It's like 10:30 at night, like he usually cooks. The lady by this point is sleeping. She usually sleeps on the couch, so she's sleeping on the couch. He's, it's late, so he just cooks and doesn't really talk to her. And she's trying to sleep, and so he's just cooking quietly like his normal routine is. And the old man comes and starts, again, he always catches people in the kitchen, and so this guy's cooking his meal, tired after work, after a long day of work. It's late at night. He's trying to be quiet. This lady, is sleeping or resting on the couch. Sleeping, resting on the couch. The guy, like he's trying to be respectful and quiet and saying like to the old man, like, hey, we can talk about this in the morning, or let's go somewhere else and talk about it. And I'm in my room. I can overhear this argument like escalating because they would fight. Like, the old man and the old woman would fight, and they'd get into little yelling matches, but it wouldn't last that long usually. Or the old man he would always be arguing with somebody, not every day, but like usually he was involved when there were arguments. And usually, people were just annoyed by him in general because he was always just like overtaking everybody's free time or their kind of like plan to just come out of the room and like do whatever they were trying to do. And he was always just like disrupting people with his long conversations. So it's like people were already annoyed with him and had a short kind of amount of patience with him because he was already overstepping everybody's boundaries like all the time. Like, he just couldn't. I know people didn't really tell him, hey, I don't want to talk to you, but it's like he couldn't take a hint either. It's kind of like nobody wanted to talk to him the way that he was talking to them all the time, and everyone kind of felt forced because it's like, well, I'm cooking, so I have to talk to him, or I'm like just trying to be nice, so I have to talk to him. And so, that only goes on so far until somebody's going to confront it. And so that argument became some whole other argument about, all these kind of topics. And, eventually the old man ends up getting in the guy's face who I was sharing a wall with. This is all happening in the kitchen, and, it just gets to a point where it just escalates to where, this patient guy that I would share a wall with, he got really upset and pushed the other guy, just like pushed the old man kind of like into this table that was kind of by one of the fridges where people could like store like extra pots and pans and stuff. Like, there was nothing really important there, but I kind of heard that rattle, and like it kind of braced his fall. Like, he didn't fall through the table, nothing got broken. I'm pretty sure he wasn't injured, but then I hear them starting to say like, I guess somebody like knocks on my door and then knocks on the lady's door across the hall from me, and they're like, call the police, like, I'm gonna call the police because you're harassing me or whatever. So they start trying to get us involved to call the police, and I'm just like, dear God, like, can you guys just like shut up? Like, this isn't even like about anything. They're arguing about a stupid box, you know, and it wasn't even his box, you know, but it's like, I don't know if this old man was drinking at the time or what, but he would be often like, his personality didn't seem like he was completely like all there, if that makes sense, all the time. Like he was usually a little off. Like seemed like he was like a little, maybe close to being a little tipsy a lot of the time, but I'm not sure. I can't really, like, I know he had a history of drinking, and he mentioned, you know, being sober and going to meetings and stuff like that, but I don't know if he actively drank. Like, I never saw him drinking. I always saw the old woman carrying in like cases of Heineken or Corona, and then I would hear her, you know, emptying out those bottles into the recycle every so often. Like right when it would be taken, she would empty out all that stuff. And so that started becoming an issue. And this is during the Rona. This is like April of the Rona. So like first thing during the Rona, people are already fighting in April or near April. This guy plans to move out. Actually, I don't know if it was 2020 of April of 2020 or April of 2021. I think it was April of 2021 because I had been already working from home for a while at that point, but I really can't recall. Maybe it was April of 2021 because I feel like I left like a year after he did, and so I think it was April of 2021, but still during the Rona. Everyone had already been stressed living with one another. By this point, it was just a household of disasters. And so, you know, the guy I share a wall with decides, you know, I'm going to move. You know, I'm going to move. I don't want to live in this house. It's, you know, too chaotic. This guy has too many problems. And I agreed because I was like, you know, that old man, he wasn't ever aggressive with me. Like, he was aggressive as in, like, he would aggressively be, like, not rude to me, not mean to me, but just, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, in a way, like, forcefully start conversations. Like, he could tell that I didn't want to talk and would just make every effort in the world to, like, interact and start conversations. When it was clear I wasn't trying to talk to him. Like, I could literally be on the phone and he'd be trying to talk to me. Or I could be, like, with my earbuds in and clearly listening to something, and he'd just be talking. And he knew that, you know, I was a bit of a pushover in that way with not wanting to be, you know, impolite to elders and trying to be respectful towards people. So I would just give in and just start, like, at least letting him talk to me until the point where I would just be like, I'm busy, I gotta go kind of thing. But I wouldn't ever, like, fully, completely, 110%, like, ignore him, you know. But I would tell him, you know, I really don't have time to talk. I really don't want to talk, like, that kind of stuff. So I would say with me, that's kind of where it was a little bit aggressive. Like, it was kind of like, I felt like unless I literally just went to my door and just, like, shut the door, and he would still, on very rare, on some occasions, he would knock on my door and still be trying to, like, talk to me through the door and stuff. And I was just like, dear God, like, go away, you know. But, you know, I would call that a form of aggression, but it wasn't like, he was always being kind to me and, like, nice and polite to me, but, like, I didn't want to talk to him, you know. Like, at a certain point, I was like, I don't like the way this guy treats people. You know, he's nice, he means well. I knew where he was trying to get, and I know he came from, like, a family background that wasn't so wholesome, and he was lonely in his old age. He didn't have connections with his kids. He didn't have connections with family. He didn't have close friends. But he kind of used the housemates as, like, some kind of makeshift family that nobody wanted to be a part of but him. And he was, like, trying so hard to, like, hold on to, like, you know, relationships with people, it seemed like. And he would treat people like, you know, the younger ones of us, he would treat us like we were his kids and try to, like, tell us kind of what to do and stuff, and, like, not really, but kind of like it was enough that, like, it was hard to not want to avoid him. I'll put it that way. Like, he was probably the person in the house that I wanted to interact with the least. Maybe even over the wild lady, because the interactions with him were just completely, like, it was just constant, you know? Like with her, it was like you never even knew like what she had going on in her head, and so you're just like whatever, and you could just ignore it. But with him, it was like coherent, and then it was like sometimes it was just like too heavy of topics. Like I don't want to talk to him, you know. So there was that kind of thing that was kind of like a regular thing to have to deal with. And when they had that blowout argument, you know, the guy I shared a wall with started looking for spots to move to. I want to say this was in March of 2021, and he moved out in April 2021. So once he moved out, the old man offered for the lady who was on the couch, the one who was kind of wild and was always like stomping around and zipping stuff, unzipping stuff, like, you know, she used to leave like wads of hair in the bathroom and, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, she just wasn't easy to live with. And then she moved into his room. So now me and her start sharing a wall. And the problem that she had in the living room just got worse. Like, I guess she felt like she had more privacy or isolation. And I soon realized she was not talking on the phone to anybody, but she was talking, you know, pretty much to herself or yelling at some kind of delusional kind of like hallucination type thing. I don't really know what it was, you know. I never really got involved with it. But it's kind of interesting that I've noticed those types of people, you know, whenever you try to ignore them to do what you need to do for yourself, they start getting offended that you don't want to be their friend. And I kind of came across that kind of interaction with the old lady too. Like, she kind of felt um like I should talk to her when she felt like I should. And then the same thing with, you know, the old man, like he kind of felt that way about everybody in the house. And then this younger lady, I think she kind of, you know, the wild one, she kind of, I think, realized that I didn't want to talk to her. And yes, maybe she was offended by it, but I also didn't care because at this point I was so sick of all these people. Um, and all this time I was like saving and trying to be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna get a place, you know. But during the Rona, you know, rent kept going up and up and up. Um, so in May of, you know, 2022, I basically decided that I was gonna get out of that situation, and so I pretty much moved. Um, so May of 2022, I decided to leave. Um, but before I left, like I basically left as in I went to a hotel and I was like, I'll stay here for like 4 or 5 days or however long. Because I was basically just gonna move back to LA with my folks. I was like, if they can't, because the whole time, you know, I would talk to this old man about her, about this lady, and the situation in the house in general, and I'll be like, look, this isn't good for any of us. It's not healthy. I don't like it. I'm not happy here. And there was a guy who had moved onto the couch, um, after that lady started sharing a wall with me. This older gentleman, probably like 50 or something years old, really sweetheart of a guy. He would stay on the couch, and you know, he was a hardworking person. He would just go to work, and then come back and want to unwind at the end of the day. And he was just trying to save up money and live cheaply. And you know, he got frustrated that, you know, the old man would talk to him all the time. There'd be the old man and old woman bickering. This lady I shared a wall with was being loud all the time, stomping around, going in and out of the front door, roaming around in the neighborhood, just like yelling and stuff and slamming stuff in her room and all this kind of nonsense. So he was getting no rest. None of us were getting any rest at a certain point. And it was worse when she lost her job for like a month or something. It was just a disaster. And her car broke down at the same time. And so she starts borrowing the old man's car. So they're sharing a car, and she can't seem to come back on time or whatever. and she's running his car into the ground, and his car starts having issues that he has to keep paying to fix, and he paid to get her car towed, and she drove her car when it wasn't working and got it stalled in the middle of the street. He had to help her push it back into place and all this stuff. So, I keep talking to him, and I'm like, look, what are you doing to resolve this problem? Because, like, this has got to change. Like, I was like, yeah, it was annoying at first, and it was really a burden. But after living in a house for a year like this with these people, and once she started sharing a wall with me, I was like, this is too much. And she wasn't even able to pay the rent fully, and so he's covering her rent. He's getting more and more stressed at her. So he and her start getting in these yelling matches on a very regular basis, which is sharing a wall with me. And like, even once during work, they start fighting when I'm working, and then there's another time when they start doing it, and I'm like, no, like, I come out of my room and I'm like, look, guys, I am like working right now. I can't have you guys like screaming at each other and stuff. So they profusely like apologize after that, and like they're like, it won't happen, we won't do that anymore. And then it gets to a point where she starts popping off while I'm at work, and she's over there yelling at her thing in her room and slamming and stomping and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, like, I have clients on the phone with really sensitive conversation, and she's over here just like screaming and yelling in some incoherent language. It wasn't. I'm very good with languages, guys. Like, I can, I'm familiar with most accents and languages, at least generally where they come from. And whatever she was speaking was not a language. It was like almost similar to how when people speak in tongues, how you're just like, what? Like, they're just kind of like babbling around and stuff. It was almost like that, but she'd be just like yelling like that, and like, I was just like, dear Lord, like, and maybe that's what she was doing. Maybe she was speaking in tongues. I don't really know, but it was enough that it was too much to deal with. And I just started doing whatever I wanted at a certain point. I was like, when I want to play music, I'm going to play music. If I want to talk on my phone, I'm going to talk on my phone. Like, nobody else in this house seems to care. And I was quiet up until that point, once I had kind of just like checked out from really caring. And then, so she starts getting worse, and, I tell this guy, I'm like, because I stuck it out for a while because I could see he was trying to resolve the issue, but his method of resolving the issue was banging on her door and yelling at her, and she'd yell back at him, and he'd yell back at her, and she'd yell back at him. Then the old lady will come out and yell at the both of them, and it was just like, dear God, this was how he was resolving the situation, was everybody, let's yell at each other until somebody just stops, for a few hours, and then she'd be at it again. So I started texting him whenever she was popping off in that room, and I would just be like, she's doing it again, she's doing it again, she's doing it again. And so the problem stopped becoming something I had to deal with alone. And I was like, well, you're the one in charge of this house, so he should be the one dealing with it. And he did say, I have evicted people before, I have asked people to leave before, so I'll give her a few more chances, and if it comes to that, he was going to make her have to leave. I leave one weekend, and I come back from being probably in LA or something. I was out of town. I come back. No, I was snowboarding, and I come back into town, into San Diego, and I overhear this whole scenario that this wild lady had called the cops on this old man in the back, dark-skinned old man, during a high tension time with police and Black Lives Matter and all these other things. She calls the police on him, and so I'm like, geez, like, but I mean, maybe it was warranted. I don't know, because he was kind of not being nice to her, but she had some issue that she had uncontrolled, and he would yell at her about this issue. So it was like nothing was really getting solved, nothing was getting better. It was just problem after problem after problem after problem of these people. And nobody seemed to be able to find a solution. So I myself eventually realize, if I want this done, if I want this problem resolved, I'm gonna have to do it myself. I'm just gonna have to leave because it doesn't seem like he's able to do anything. It doesn't seem like I'm able to do anything. Like nothing was getting done, nothing was getting better. And for that reason, I was like, well, I don't think I can stay here then. So I left, and it wasn't an easy decision to leave, but I had to do it for my own self. And I was like, working at the job I was working at too, and living in the place I was living at, wasn't getting me to my financial goals. It wasn't getting me to my housing goals. I was actually stepping backwards because, like, my mental health, my sleep patterns, my energy was getting worse and worse and worse as I tried to put up with these people that I lived with. And so, that led me to move to LA, and it's still a lot to manage living in LA because I'm living with folks and we're not too involved with one another, like on a level that, I'm just so fed up with living with people at this point. Like, I'm just like I don't even want my parents to be involved in my life. I'm not even really giving them the opportunity. I'm just kind of like, I don't even really want to be here. I want to be back in San Diego doing my own thing, living my own life in my own place with my own friends, and just, so I'm trying to make it easy on myself to not really want to stay out here too long, if that makes sense. Because I don't find it to be a necessity, but yeah, it's a lot to deal with. It's not an easy situation, but yeah, like I wish it could be easier, but it's not. And that's just the reality, and there's not really much I can do about that right now. Just got to get the job I'm trying to get and get out, so that's all I really have to say about that, all that kind of scenario, that whole situation. But yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot about living in LA too. It's kind of a different way to live in LA because I'm not really trying to stay here. I mean, I would like to get a property out here, but I don't think, I don't really see myself living here long term. I'm almost out. I think I can still get back to San Diego by September, but in a few weeks it's going to be a year since I've moved to LA, so we'll see how that goes. And let's see, I might post a daily after this, and I'll keep going with this storyline. But yeah, I was kind of out at this house I lived at, that house near USD, this last one before I moved to LA again. One Pride, I started like keeping a rainbow flag in my car and just kept it there since. And then one of my housemates, I talked about it before, he accidentally opened one of my books while he was living there. The guy I shared a wall with, that I got along with, because he didn't really know, he wasn't paying attention, and we'd always had this, like, he'd always been getting all the mail, so yeah, so he didn't really know that it was mine, and so there was that. But yeah. Alright, my daily from probably the evening of May 3rd into May 4th, which is today. Lunchtime today. So from around dinner time yesterday to lunchtime today. So last, like on the 3rd, I was kind of not too pleased, I guess I could say, that, we were eating dinner pretty late. We ate around 7:30 p.m. Mind you, I usually eat dinner around 4:30 p.m. or somewhere between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. So I had prepared snacks. It was like a single slice of this cauliflower crust pizza that someone in the family had refrigerated from something they had previously eaten, and then a Koya protein shake. I had like half of it. I had the other half of it for today's snack. So yeah, I mean, I ate dinner, felt pleasant about the food. We had this oxtail. It was always delicious. But there's something with the cooking, I don't know if it's red meat or if it's I don't know if it's red meat or if it's oil that seems to kind of do something to my respiratory, my lungs, my sinuses. It kind of agitates things. I've been having that situation come up, excuse me, quite often. But you hear, I get this cough, and it almost always seems to be after a day that I've eaten something that, that my folks have cooked, as far as like usually my dad cooking, because he does a lot of saute meals, or even like slow cooker meals. Like the meat usually is slow cooked, and while I appreciate it, it's just, I can't be having like weird problems like once a week or whatever. Like it's just too much to have to manage. So I mean, I've definitely talked to my folks about kind of like, hey, like I have my own, preferred type of food that I eat. I'm not saying that I totally eat healthy all the time. I mean, I'll have McDonald's once a week or something. But overall, I eat pretty clean. Not too high calorie meals. Not too much carbs. Not too much fat. Not too much red meat. Like, I don't really eat red meat at all. Other than, okay, so that's not true. Because if I eat McDonald's, I might get like a cheeseburger or two. But, I try not to eat more than that of red meat. And I don't always go to McDonald's. But that's kind of like my main vice right now is the McDonald's. So, but yeah, like I'm trying. Oh, now it's gonna get hot. So basically, I'm trying to, still work on my health. And everything along those lines, but like I'm grateful that I have people that are willing to cook for me and cook stuff that I like. I mean, oxtail isn't cheap, but the heavy oil is just too much. And I do notice the next day I always feel kind of poorly. Like I've been having sinus and kind of like throat clearing issues pretty much since last night. Since after I ate, it started kind of kicking in like before I went to sleep. So that's not good, but I'm trying to keep track of things and not be too like be strict, but not so strict that I'm like depriving myself. But I want to see health results every week. Like I want to feel good every week, and I want to see changes in my health with the efforts I've been making. So it is a challenge, because I do kind of have a bit of an obligation to engage with family. And sorry guys, I hang out in parking lots a lot, so that's how I kind of get out of the house. Just kind of find a place to chill outdoors, so I can record. But it's a little challenging because people always want to freaking come up and park like right next to you. So, yeah, that's kind of a little. That's why I keep always rolling up my windows, rolling down my windows. Like, I'm not trying to, decrease the quality of these recordings, but it is kind of hard to, record when there's people just always around because I'm in a public space. So, yeah. So there's that. I think I see a kind of shady area. So I'm gonna go take that spot actually. So yeah, excuse me while I drive. I'm gonna park in some shade. So yeah. Somebody's over here working on these cars. There's a lot where I always park. Well, not always, but one of the lots I park at and hang at. There's a car that's always there with a cover on it. And it looks like there's a bunch of other stuff, like a lawn, like a kind of like a foldable beach chair, a tire. In the tire, there's some bags, some belongings in there. So I wonder if during the rain, this car got, I'm wondering if during the rain, with the wind, the cover got blown off, because it looks like it's partly blown off and the wind's still picking it up. I feel like the cover's gonna blow off of this thing. But I don't know. The other day I saw somebody get in the car. They went under the cover and opened the car and were in there for like a few minutes, and then I saw them kind of crawl back out from under it. So it seems to be somebody who works here. I don't know if they live in their car or if it's just there. It doesn't seem to ever get towed. I haven't seen any citations on it. I've seen police officers roll through this lot a bit. Like, this part of the city where I live in, there's, it's LA, so there's police. They just patrol everywhere anyways, and so I see them kind of patrolling on a regular basis, and like not like too many times a day or anything, but it happens. Like, they're there. There's a presence, and they seem to see it and not be concerned. So I don't really know. The car looks like it would run. Like, visibly, it's a sports car, and it looks like it's in good condition. But I don't really know. I've never seen it move from that spot. So I don't know. I don't know how long it's been there, but it's been there at least a few weeks. So I don't know. But yeah. So yeah. last night, I guess, I was mostly alright. Just, I went to sleep. Um, and when I went to sleep kind of early, had some melatonin. I had like half of one of them around 9 something. The second half of it, which would have been up to 3 milligrams of melatonin, that second half of it I had around maybe close to 10. And then I don't remember when, but I had a full one because I still wasn't falling asleep. So I had 6 milligrams of melatonin total, as well as the other supplements that are kind of mixed into that gummy. And I knocked out around 10:30. Dreamt a lot, had a lot of dreams, and then was woken up around 3 something because of the storm, and the sound of the rain and everything kind of woke me. And I got a little warm too because the heater was on because it was raining and the window was open. And so I turned down the heater, went to the bathroom, couldn't go back to sleep. I was kind of up, not feeling great, but was kind of up. And that was at about like 5.5 hours of sleeping because I had started playing that audio track when I was falling asleep, and so I saw that it was at about 5.5 hours. So I stopped the track. I stopped the track because I was how do I say this? I don't know. I just stopped it. Like I stopped playing it. Because I was like, well, I'm not really sleeping right now. And I kind of use it to track if I'm sleeping. So I wasn't really asleep actively at that time when I was awake. And I laid there for a while, tried to fall asleep, and I was like, I'm not going to fall asleep. So I just got up and watched this. I watched the most recent Jade Fox video. I think it was like an anniversary with her and Jaden, kind of talking about questions about relationships or something that they were taking from their audience. And I guess it's part 1 of 2, and so there's going to be a second part because they said there were a lot of questions that they didn't really get to. And so yeah, there's that. And then I basically went from there to basically went from there to eventually kind of falling back to sleep around 4 something. It wasn't very restful, and then I slept till probably like 7:30, I think, 7:20, 7:15, or somewhere around there. Woke up, I was like, I don't really feel rested. But the track had like about a minute left, so I had slept total about 8 hours by that point. But I didn't really feel like getting up, having coffee that early, so I just laid there for a while till like 8:30 or so, and then I actually started getting up. Even though I didn't want to, I told myself I was gonna lay down till like 8:45 or 8:50, and then I was like, no, just get up now. So I got up. This is this morning, May 4th. I got up, kind of started my morning. Had some egg bites from Sprouts, half an avocado, coffee. It was kind of bulletproof coffee. Not a lot of MCT oil, not a lot of ghee, but a little bit. And then still that mushroom coffee by Four Sigmatic, the one with the lion's mane and the, the chaga. And so, yeah, that's like 50 milligrams of caffeine. and just mostly protein and some good fat for breakfast. And some strawberries. I had strawberries too, but not really carbs. I don't know if ghee has carbs. It probably does, but not really any carbs. So maybe that's why my energy is not like super pumped. I wasn't really having like a super pumped day. And I figured I was like, well, I already don't feel good. So, well, I don't not feel good, but I was like, instead of leaving early and studying outside the house, I was like, I decided just to study at the house. So I studied at the house this morning after breakfast. Kind of had a hard time with it. Was texting friends and kind of on Instagram a little bit and like a little YouTube. Just kind of, chatting online with people and not really focused on studying, but was studying. I basically studied to the point where I was just like, I don't really think I'm focused anymore. And so it was almost lunch, and I was like, let me beat the lunch rush. So I decided to have McDonald's for lunch today, grabbed McDonald's, and then came over to this lot to eat and do some recording just to get myself out of the house. But that's kind of how I roll. I'm like, if I'm home, I don't want to be doing a whole lot of stuff that's going to cost me a whole lot of money. I got this Vegas trip coming up too, so I'm trying not to spend a lot. I'm debating if I might go to a Cinco de Mayo gay bar event tomorrow, but I don't really know. Oh, and I forgot to mention, like while I was studying, I had a little bit of C4, a little bit, not even, like just enough to coat the bottom of the, the bottom of the little scooper with the powder, just enough to cover the whole bottom of it. So it wasn't really a lot. I don't even know how to dose that, how many milligrams of caffeine that is. Like, you're not really supposed to have it on the days when you have other caffeinated beverages, but I kind of was like, I kind of just need my energy to kind of pump up a little bit so I can focus on studying, and then when I do some podcasting, focus on that, because I was feeling pretty foggy. And that's been a theme. Like, I've been feeling pretty foggy. Most days, it's kind of hard to shake. I've got some doctor's appointments coming up and stuff, but I'm basically just gonna chill here until, basically till I have to go to the bathroom pretty much, and then I'll head back to the house, and probably get some rest, and then study for the rest of the evening pretty much. I try to get out of this area by like 2:45 or so it gives me enough time to get 2:45, giving me plenty of time to get back to the house, so that I'm like okay. And I didn't get gas this week. I try to get like $10 of gas, but I might just go get $10 of gas before I go home. I don't really know. So I might do that today. Got a nice free car wash from the rain, so I'm glad I didn't pay for a car wash this week, because the rain did a decent job this time. And yeah, that's basically all I've been doing. That's basically my plan for today. I haven't really been writing down every single thing that I've been doing like I was the other weeks. Let me see, when was the last time I did that? It looks like, well, maybe on like May 1st I kind of did it. I just wrote like a list of what I did. So yeah, and then Saturday, April 29th, I wrote a little bit of it. So probably since April 28th, I haven't really been writing um, writing down the actual like play-by-play of my day as far as timestamps of things, because I do kind of have a rhythm, especially since I've been kind of getting out of the house for quite a few hours. And I don't know, maybe I'm tired out this week because of the 3 days that I left the house. What was it, 3 days? Maybe it was 3 days. I think it was Saturday. I think it was Monday and Tuesday for sure. Wednesday, I can't remember. No, Wednesday was yesterday. I stayed home because Tuesday I had pulled something a bit of a back muscle at the gym. So I was like, let me just make sure I force myself to kind of relax. Plus, it was Weed Wednesday, so I was like, let me just do what I gotta do, like stick to the plan, force rest, and I don't know, like I don't feel like I feel rested, but in some ways I feel kind of foggy too. So I don't know, and I don't know. It might be the cannabis, but I don't know because I have been using cannabis products pretty regularly, not like every single day, but pretty regularly for a while. But it might be the strain of my vape pen. Like that's the only thing I can kind of think of why I've been so foggy lately. If it's not something other than that, I really don't know what it is. Like my mood isn't like sad necessarily. Like I'm not like, I can't say definitively that I'm not depressed. Like I feel like my energy is like not where I want it to be. Like I'm still having trouble getting in my workouts and stuff, but I don't feel like my energy's like pumped up. Like I don't wake up feeling like super refreshed, super alert, super like, high, fast paced kind of like ability. Like I'm kind of like groggy and foggy most days, and I just kind of get up and I'm just like, and the other days this week felt a little easier for me. Today was the first day I was like, I don't really have the pure motivation to do what it is that I had set out to do as far as studying. And I don't want to take this stupid practice test tomorrow, but I also am kind of frustrated with the situation of, not being in work right now, and, I don't know, like I'm kind of at a, like, I don't know, I get in this kind of like fuck it mode. I was talking to a friend about this, saying like I'm kind of in a fuck it mode, and that's kind of like a good state to be, because even though I'm not like purely motivated, I'm also not like so demotivated that I can't do anything. Like I'm still like making strides and kind of getting the bare basics done of what I set out to do every day. It's definitely not like coming easy. Like the way I felt Monday compared to the way I felt today, Thursday, is so different. Like, that microdose of Blue Meanie strain psilocybin was really impactful and helpful for me. And today I don't feel that way. And it's possibly just something as simple as not sleeping well. Because I did sleep. I slept 8 hours, but it wasn't uninterrupted sleep. And I did dream a lot though, which was weird. The night before I had kind of an unpleasant dream, which isn't normal for me. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember waking up and being like, that wasn't a good dream. But it wasn't anything specific that stood out that was bad. I just remember being overwhelmed and stressed in the dream, but I don't remember why. I don't remember like what the details were. I just remember like I woke up and I was a little bit like that wasn't pleasant. I didn't like that, but I guess I'm lucky. I don't have bad dreams often, but I also haven't been dreaming as much as I was. Like there was a point where I was just having dreams a lot, and like very vivid dreams. It might be because I don't take CBN or CBD at night anymore. because I did switch to melatonin for the most part once I ran out of CBD products, so maybe that's what it is. I'd have to maybe check the details of the timeline on that to make for sure, but I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to really tell. Like, I really don't know, in all honesty. But yeah, I've been trying to chill. Just kind of, you know, follow the game plan, make plans that seem very realistic and doable and able to be accomplished. And great, here comes some other person parking right next to me. But yeah, so yeah, that's kind of what I've been kind of dealing with. It hasn't been the easiest, but in a lot of ways it's easier than it was. Like, I definitely notice, there has been some improvement to the ease of things. Like, it's gotten easier. Things have become a little bit easier. Like, compared to some other days before where it was like, I literally couldn't work out. I literally couldn't exercise. I literally couldn't eat healthy. I was just like buying Uber Eats all the time because I couldn't even stand to be like in a shared space with any family members, and just irritable all the time. Like, I don't really feel that irritability as much lately. Like, I kind of do, but not too much. Like, I do find myself kind of like a little bit back to my normal kind of like cracking jokes with my folks every now and then, like saying a couple things, laughing a little bit, a little, not a lot, but a little. But I definitely am feeling a little less grumpy and irritable. Like, I don't feel like I have to completely avoid being around people just so I can make sure I'm not like disrupting anybody else's peace of mind and like being like short and snapping at people and stuff. Like, I do feel better on that end a little bit. Like, it's definitely noticeable, but I still don't prefer it. I still don't prefer to be like very interactive, but it isn't as hard as it was. Like, I've for sure noticed that it's not as hard as it was. Like, and I don't know when that changed, but it's definitely changed. I've kind of felt like some things are getting slightly easier, but I don't know. Like, it's kind of hard for me to avoid comparing how I feel lately, how I feel now, how I felt like way back, like in December of 2022. Comparing how I felt then, right before ending my job and stuff, like, and how overwhelmed and foggy I was then, where I literally couldn't even work. Like, I remember there was a day literally where I was at a hotel because it was one of my last days, like during my last week, and like just literally sitting there staring at my computer. Like, I was doing nothing. I finished nothing. I got like nothing done. And I did have some other days like that too, where I was like, well, the internet's down, or our system was down for like 2 or 3 days. So I remember back then, like, I think that was in October, and I remember back then being like so overwhelmed with work that I just checked out. I was like, I'll wait and see if any incoming calls come in, and I would take calls from clients, but I wasn't like making outgoing calls, which was fine. Like, I had good communication with management, and that was totally fine. They're like, it does make sense, if the system's down, to not like rack up work for yourself and then have to go back in and like back enter a whole bunch of like multiple days worth of stuff. But after like the second or so day of that, it's like, okay, they were like, well, you're just gonna have to back enter it, like get to the point where you have to back enter it. And then they were like, don't just sit on it anymore. But yeah, we were allowed maybe a day or two to just kind of, do what we could do. Like I wasn't avoiding clients, I wasn't avoiding like incoming sessions or anything that had already been planned. But if it wasn't planned, I wasn't going out of my way to just like call and check in and stuff. And that was fine. They were like, that's fine. They didn't really mind, giving us that, that kind of freedom and flexibility. But I do remember just like knocking out in the middle of the day, a couple of those days, just being like, just like falling asleep in the middle of what would have been my shift because I wasn't getting any calls, and that was normal. It was a slow part of the season, and so when I compare that to lately, I'm like, I definitely feel better lately, overall. But then when I compare now and that ending chapter of 2022, comparing that to this and that to, maybe how I felt when I was doing well in grad school, like 9 or so years ago, like when I was in grad school and stuff, like, and how I was functioning, like in the early days, not when everything was like falling apart, but yeah, I was definitely more energetic, more just like, I didn't have so many things stacked against me or so many things like interfering with my days. Like I always had poor sleep. That's never been, I don't think I've ever really had like the best of sleep patterns. I think this is the first time in my life I've ever been actively tracking my sleep, like I mentioned, like using that 8 hour, audio track on my phone to like actually track how long I'm sleeping. Like I have had like a smartwatch or like some phone app that kind of like tracks your sleep snoring, and if you rustle on your pillow, and like, and it shows you like spikes in time when you're, like not asleep or whatever, or when there's like noise in the background or whatever. It was a free app, and I used that like years ago, but I haven't used it lately. And then the smartwatch, like it wasn't too accurate. Like it would say stuff like, "Oh, you slept 4 hours," or "You slept like 7 hours," or like anytime you would kind of like get up, it wouldn't really like start counting again. Like it would just kind of, like, I don't know, like if you were just like laying there, so it would count like maybe the time that I was laying there from like 9:30 p.m. to like 10:30 p.m. and I would know. I was like, well, I was awake, like I wasn't sleeping, and it would have counted that as having slept. And then it's like, so it wasn't like super accurate. And I did use it for a while, but I remember leaving that watch on for a few days, and then it kind of, I had some kind of weird issue on my wrist because it kind of, I guess it has like I don't know if it's a laser light or like an LED light, but there's some kind of light. I think it irritates the skin. Like it kind of senses. It's like a sensor kind of light. I don't know what it's called, honestly, but I think it kind of interferes with, skin, and it kind of left this dark spot on my skin, like that kind of irritated my skin a little bit. And so, and my aunt had mentioned just before that she got like a burn on her skin because she didn't take it off, and I didn't really know what she meant by like a burn until I started getting like an issue, and I was like, oh yeah, I got like a little, section of my skin kind of impacted by that too. So I stopped kind of relying on that smartwatch. Like it's not the best. Like it's good for some stuff. Like it's kind of stylish, and it's good for the gym to kind of like, so I don't have to keep going in my phone and like writing down how long I spent doing stuff. But it's not too accurate. all the time. So I mostly just use it at the gym now. I don't use it for like tracking sleep and all that. And it's not like the most comfortable to be wearing to bed either. Like it's comfortable in the daytime when I'm out, but even like right now I'm not wearing it. Like I wear it like pretty much specifically to the gym or as like an accessory when I go out. Um, just something that kind of I feel like it looks kind of nice, you know. So it's like a small accessory for when I go out, but because I don't really have a lot of jewelry and stuff, but yeah, but yeah, it's mostly what I've been dealing with lately, and then planning on starting some health, getting my healthcare sessions kind of scheduled. So that's kind of what I've been working on lately. I wanted to write a lot of music yesterday, but I didn't. But I did listen to a lot of music and watched some music related shows and movies. I finished rewatching Straight Outta Compton, which I thought I had rewatched recently, but I didn't really remember it. So I was like, wow, like I really didn't recall that movie very well. And then I started watching Boys in the Hood. I'm a little more than halfway through that, but I've seen it kind of more recently again. Like I rewatch stuff a lot. I kind of just like it because Ice Cube, and I was gonna rewatch Friday as well. I might actually watch it tomorrow because tomorrow will be Friday. Like if I don't go out for Cinco de Mayo, maybe I'll just stay home and watch Friday. But I don't know. I'm kind of like, it's just weird. Like I'm just like tired a lot, and it's really kind of strange, you know. Like some days I can tell that like having a more rested schedule is helping me, and I'm definitely feeling and seeing the benefits. And overall, I would say things are improving, but it's just the little stuff, which is why I like to talk about it daily. I'm not, like I said before, like I might not keep recording these all the time, but it's easier than like writing it down for me because I realize I don't really go back and review it. There's something about talking about it, like mentioning it, recording about it, audio recording, that I kind of remember it a little bit more. And yeah, like I have been seeing some improvements. Like I do remember not that long ago saying that, yeah, I feel like really kind of shitty, and like, I don't want to be like irritated with people and stuff. And I was really feeling kind of like not okay, being around others. But I feel pretty good, lately I feel like alright. Like I don't feel like that good, but I feel like alright. Monday I felt great though. Monday was probably the best I felt in a really long time. And yeah, today, it is later in the week though, so I gotta give myself that. It's like, it's not out of the norm to feel a little bit depleted and, more stressed and overwhelmed and slow. And it's not like I'm not doing anything. Like I'm not just sitting around watching movies all day or Netflix or whatever. Like I've been pretty actively podcasting and, studying. I mean, recording these things does take effort. Like I have to sit and like think, and even when I'm not at my best, with, my speaking, I do have to think and try to like focus on what I'm saying, and like it does take a lot of focus. But I think it helps because I do need to practice kind of my verbal skills, because I am pretty isolated, and avoiding people, and so I do think that is kind of making it harder for me to like talk more. Like I feel like wording of things doesn't really come as easily to me as it used to. But I'm also trying to pay attention to my caffeine intake, because I don't want to get into a habit of having so much caffeine that like I start experiencing anxiety and just caffeine crashes, irritability. For me, it just helps to have less caffeine in my system. So yeah, but I guess on that note, that was a lot to say, but that takes us up to May 4th, midday May 4th. So, yes, with that, thanks for listening.